What is up? We are back with our series that we're rolling through to finish out 2025 super strong with this outdated health and wellness trends that we are absolutely leaving behind this year and welcoming in 2026 with a brand new mindset. Because guess what? We are done. I'm personally done, and I'm sure you guys out there can really attest to this too, of where we are done with these outdated models around everything in the healthcare and healthcare adjacent fields, right? We're growing, we're expanding, there's new science coming out all the time, and so we really need to upgrade a lot of our systems, and we need to upgrade a lot of our beliefs. So if you've been with us for this series so far and missed our part 1 series last week, be sure to go back and listen to it, because we started off strong, really talking about some of the nutrition themes that I see coming down the pipeline as things that we're absolutely going to be leaving behind in 2025. Some of the new thought processes that we're going to be bringing into 2026 that are going to be upgraded and so much better and so much more effective. So if you missed the conversation that we had last week around this very significant and drastic rebrand and understanding that we desperately need around protein, go listen to it, because you might be falling for some of the protein misunderstandings and some of the protein dupes that I'm still seeing people make these glaring mistakes with on a regular basis. And so today we're going to be moving into part 2 of our outdated health and wellness trends of 2025 with this series around why your basic blood work is failing you, and the reframe and also upgrade that we need in our lab testing opportunities going into not just 2026, but 2026 and beyond. Because I think that, like I said, I can speak for multiple individuals out there when I say that we are really done having this same conversation in the healthcare field. I am personally done hearing about it, because so many individuals are coming to me saying how they have been through some of their primary care provider or endocrinologist, OBGYN, rheumatologist, and they just keep getting the same basic blood work, and they keep getting the same feeling of, oh, all of your labs are normal, but this individual still very much does not feel normal. They still feel like trash. And so then they go to the next specialist, and what are we going to do? We're going to run them again? Like, for using the same provider with the same outdated lab ranges for the 3rd time this year? I'm like, we need to talk, okay? We need to talk, because we need a much better and a higher level standard in our healthcare system in 2026 and beyond. And I really think a lot of it starts with how we're collecting some of that diagnostic data that is leading our treatment plans, and that is lab testing, okay? So if, like I said, you are new here, welcome to Learn with Lo. Learn with Lo is going to be the platform where I, Lauren Moore, get a really chance to do some deep dive on these relevant health topics for us. And this is where we're going to really leave behind the basic, we're going to leave behind the boring, and we're going to leave behind all of these broken belief systems that, let's be real, they're just not working anymore. And we're in the middle, like I said, of this really juicy series of these health trends that we're going to be leaving behind in 2026. So I really want to kind of, like I said, focus in today on, even if you've been told that your blood work or your lab work looks normal, it may not be you. It could massively be the lab and the lab testing that your provider is ordering, or the lab testing that your provider is kind of leaning on as a dictation of what your future recommendations and your future treatments are. Trust that your body is not broken. Your body is absolutely communicating through us. And while blood work can be a great starting spot for a lot of individuals, it's not the end of the road. It's just that. It's the starting spot. And we are in the midst of really a healthcare system right now that is being massively underserved to most patients, that's supposed to be helping us. And that's because I think, like I said, a lot of our training from a conventional medicine standpoint is really focused on just what it should be. It is focused on taking people from dying to surviving. And if you are not in that state of dying to surviving, you're very much surviving, their toolbox is going to run out, and they're going to be running the same basic blood work and looking at the same basic diagnostic markers, when it really should be looking outside of some of this basic blood work, because it's going to be a whole different diagnostic lab that is going to help us really look at, sure, you're surviving surviving, but are you thriving? And quite often, the blood work that you just keep running over and over again is not going to cut it. And that's where I think we need to kind of understand that it's not necessarily the provider and it's not necessarily the lab. It is very much the entire system in which that healthcare is operating in. So let's just really dive in today and really kind of talk first and foremost of like, how did we get here? How did we get to this place where our basic lab work is failing us and we keep getting this same rigmarole of your labs are normal and we keep running the same labs over and over again expecting different results? Because really the big underpinning theme that we need to identify here, and one of the biggest kind of cruxes of the issue that we're seeing in the healthcare industry right now, is that the labs that are getting run in more of that conventional medicine that is designed to take someone from dying to surviving, the labs that we're running in there are not being chosen because they're the most comprehensive labs. The lab markers that are being chosen to get drawn and get run on you are the ones that are being chosen because truly they are the most billable markers to insurance. I'm just going to put it out there because that's what we're doing at Learn with Lo. We're going to be talking about the system in which the issue kind of lies, right? So when we think about lab testing, I think a lot of individuals get frustrated because it's more so we're placing the blame and the onus of the blame on the wrong situation. A lot of individuals, like I said, are either going to blame the lab. The lab didn't run the right markers, even though I told them to. Or the worst part is a lot of these providers and well-intentioned doctors are getting the blame for that as well too. And they're like, oh, my doctor, my provider just didn't run those markers. And quite frankly, it's like, could it be a little bit of an education gap that those providers are just truly, that's not what the conventional education medical system provides to them? Their whole goal is to make sure that you're not dying. If you are not dying, then their job is done. And I think that's where we need to understand then that we can't keep operating within that same system and expect different results. It's literally the definition of crazy. We need to move outside of that system altogether and start looking for a healthcare team that's job and toolbox and training is more geared around taking someone from surviving to thriving. And that's likely not going to be in the conventional medicine system that is then dictated by the conventional health insurance model. So trust that your provider or your doctor is not like trying to do, they're trying to get you feeling better. It's just that they're not going to order what is the most comprehensive. They're not going to order what's the most clinically optimal lab markers that we should be looking at. They're going to be ordering what your insurance allows them to be ordering. If it's not a billable lab, they're probably not going to order it, right? So we have to really understand this. And it's like that little checkbox list to them of what is billable is considered complete blood work. Whereas to me, it's like, that's probably kind of like cute. I'm like half the time where someone's like, oh yeah, I had labs done recently with my provider. I'll just forward those to you. I'm like, yeah, forward them to me. It's like maybe a CBC panel, maybe a complete metabolic panel with like your glucose, maybe a lipid panel. And if they ran any hormones, they maybe ran a TSH. And I'm like getting these labs and I'm like, did someone tell you that these are comprehensive labs? Because these are just kind of cute. Like, they're really not telling me too much. And we need to and can very much be doing better. So just understand that if we're trying to get comprehensive and complete blood work inside of a model that is governed by your health insurance, you're not going to get it. Okay. And it's not the provider's fault necessarily. It's that that's not their training. That's not their toolbox. That is the system that governs how they practice and what they can practice. So in order to think better or raise that standard of healthcare, we need to be thinking outside the box and maybe thinking outside that system and not just like, oh, what can I justify ordering for this person based off of a diagnostic code that won't get rejected by Blue Cross Blue Shield? That's not how I dictate whether or what I run my lab markers on. I'm looking at the patient. I'm looking at their health history. I'm looking at their symptoms. I'm running a comprehensive lab panel based off of the markers that I, as a clinician, want to see. Now, I can do that though because I'm not dictated by the insurance model. Does that make sense? And so that's really like, if you've been struggling with that, if you're someone that's been begging your provider to run your thyroid antibodies, your fasting insulin, your homocysteine, your hsCRP levels, yeah, you should absolutely have all of those on. My definition of a comprehensive blood work panel should absolutely include all of those things and more. And they just keep telling you like it's not medically necessary. It's not about you. Trust that it is not about you. It is truly just about the system that they are operating in. And so what a lot of people will do is they're like, oh, I just need to find a new provider. And I'm like, yeah, you could do that, but then just don't get disappointed if your same experience happens again, because all you're doing is just finding another provider that was literally educated in the same exact system and is also under the same exact insurance umbrella. So don't be shocked, because it's like literally the definition of crazy is like expecting a different result, trying the same thing over and over again. And so a lot of times what people need to kind of understand is like, oh, okay, that model is based off of what my insurance will and will not cover. What that model is also based off of is what and who is interpreting those labs as well. Because a lot of times your conventionally trained providers, they have a whole subset of knowledge that is helpful if you are dying. If you are dying, they are absolutely going to be identifying some of those really key things in your labs that are off and be able to offer a more consistent treatment strategy for you. Now, if you are not dying and you are very much surviving, the only way that they are trained is to look at your labs based off of a diagnosable condition, not necessarily looking at your blood work for optimal function or for thriving status. So this is where like some of the differences, for example, like you could have the same exact lab, but two very, very, very different interpretations of that same lab. So let's just say like, oh, your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, one of those foundational markers that most even basic lab work will throw on a TSH value. And it's like, oh, your TSH is 4.4. To one provider, they're like, oh, you're not dying. You're great. Whereas me, if someone's coming in a TSH of 4.4, I'm like, that's absolutely a red flag. That should be well under 2.5. And so if you're having all of these thyroid-based symptoms, that's going to fly under the radar of someone that's not trained to look at your labs in a more functional way, but purely just a diagnostic way. Or maybe your fasting glucose comes back at 99. They're like, still under 100, see you next year. Whereas to me, a fasting glucose of 99, I'm like, yeah, that's a red flag. We should definitely be looking at hemoglobin A1C. We should be looking at triglycerides. We should be looking at your fasting insulin values. Like, why is your glucose level at 99 when we know it should be hovering closer to 70 to 85, right? Or maybe your ferritin marker, an iron marker, comes back at 12. They're like, oh, ship shape, you're within range. When I'm like, that is very low storage form of iron status. Do we have low stomach acid? Why are we not absorbing our iron? Are we eating enough iron containing foods, right? It doesn't mean that your provider there doesn't mean well. It just means that they're really only trained to look at labs like, are you in the ICU? Okay. And that is so helpful. And we need that. We absolutely need those providers. But a lot of individuals are feeling frustrated because they're using some of these providers for non-dying, non-life threatening kind of medical circumstances. And then they're getting disappointed when they're not able to move them from like surviving to thriving, because that's just not what their toolbox training has provided for them. So let's be real, sometimes this even happens in more of the functional medicine space where people claim to be different, right? But you're still getting some of these basic providers that are running the same labs. They're looking at them purely just through a diagnostic lens, and they're just adding like a supplement for every marker that's out of range. And I'm like, guys, we're doing it again. We're not understanding that labs really need to put context to your physiology as a system. Okay, you are not just a bunch of all of these different silos. You are truly a system of different integrated parts and pieces. So this is, like I said, where I'm super passionate about just helping the patient really understand, okay, where are the different models of medicine right now? And if I'm getting disappointed by my experience in one place, where do I need to start to kind of like look elsewhere for the experience that I truly deserve, or for the standard of care that I want to create for myself? So we also have to realize too, that not only is this, like I said, a bigger insurance-based system that is dictating what markers you can and cannot run, it's also a bigger system of practitioners that are trained to look at your labs a certain way, trained to look at your labs from more of a, are you dying or are you surviving? They are not trained to look at ratios and relationships. They're not trained to look at how do I take you from surviving to thriving. Not to mention that even if we just take a look at labs and blood work in general, blood work is great. I think everybody should start with blood work, but the blood as a medium for labs is not usually where we find your root cause issues. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. The blood is always a mirror. It's a great mirror for what is going on internally. But if something is showing up in the bloodstream, that means it's already happened, right? There's already dysfunction and dysregulation elsewhere. It's not really a red flag for what is brewing. It's usually a lagging indicator for us of what is already broken. And so that's why so many people, they're like, oh, your labs are normal, but you definitely don't feel normal because the dysfunction is happening under the surface and it's not showing up in your blood work yet. But you can imagine how year over year over year over year, where if you just get a provider that's just looking at your labs from a diagnostic value, they're like, yep, ship shape. Yep, looks good. Yep, come back next year. Eventually, one year you're going to come back and all of a sudden you're pre-diabetic. That didn't happen overnight. That has been brewing for probably 5 to 10 years before a full-blown pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes kind of conversation. So this is where it's like, I love blood work, yes, because it gives me breadcrumbs. It gives me breadcrumbs of like, where do I want to look next? But quite frankly, it's not really a great tool to use if we're just going to sit around and wait for our labs to be bad enough to treat something. That to me is just like very backwards and very, it's just short-sighted. It's not giving someone a really complete care experience. So this is why we tend to see individuals with like normal, healthy thyroid panels, but what you're not seeing is that they feel all of these hypothyroid symptoms, and there's this raging gut dysbiosis that is brewing in their immune system, and they are at high vulnerability risk for developing something like Hashimoto's. It's like they feel it, but their labs aren't bad enough yet because we're not looking in the right place. We're just looking at blood work. Or we see someone with like healthy liver enzymes, but they're drowning in toxicity burden. Or we see someone with like normal B12 levels, but they're definitely feeling all of this inflammation, neurological symptoms, mental health concerns, because their body's methylation pathways are absolutely tanked, right? So this is where we just need this whole body understanding. We need to zoom out and have this systems level context to the human body, and that truly is where the lowdown and the lowdown holistic medicine methodologies are so helpful for this. So I feel like truly there is a hierarchy when it comes to labs. So when I take on a patient, or when you come in and you experience care with the lowdown and our holistic medicine systems, we're not just going to gaslight you into thinking, oh, your labs are all normal, because we layer in labs. I do think it's super helpful. Everybody starts with blood work. But when I say blood work, we're not just running the basics here. Like, you are getting a comprehensive blood work panel. You'll get all of the same, your CBC, your CMP, your lipid panel, but we need to be looking at a complete thyroid panel. We need to be looking at sex hormones. We need to be looking at things like DHEA. We need to be looking at inflammatory markers. We need to be looking at micronutrient markers, and we need to be looking at more than just diagnostic ranges, but truly ratios and relationships. Because then a lot of times, based off of what the blood work is telling me, we probably need to dig a little deeper. The blood work is giving us some breadcrumbs, but then we may need, that person maybe is a great candidate to do some additional gut testing. Do we need to look at some stool testing? Do we need to look at some food sensitivity? Do we need to look at some leaky gut or some wheat zoomers to take a look at overall food reactions and immune system? Do we need to look deeper at overall toxicity burden? Do we need to run a total tox panel and see what the liver is really trying to detox? Do we need to look at genetics? How is genetics influencing your overall body and your environment, right? So you can think of really what we do at the Lowdown. I like to think of it as functional forensics, okay? It's I like to think of myself almost as someone's medical detective. Because what we do is, yes, we're starting with advanced blood work, but we're interpreting that blood work with a whole new lens, not just what's high, what's low. And that's just the starting spot, because then we're going to go on to ask, what does this pattern really mean? What does this mean for your metabolism, your detox load, your nutrient status, your immune system burden? Because that's then where, like I said, some of these deeper testing outside of blood work is really going to show us oh, wow, there's some dysbiosis off the charts. There's some toxicity burden off the charts. There's some intestinal permeability. There's some food sensitivities. It's we really want to think about how all of the body is responding together. And quite frankly, your basic blood work just doesn't cut it. And if we're going to sit here and just wait for your basic blood work to be bad enough to intervene and do something about it, you're going to be in a real bad way by that point, where we could have probably caught a lot of these things years or decades prior to them actually showing up in blood work. So if this feels like this has been your experience, something's not right, and you've been getting a little bit of a runaround with the basic labs that you've been using other providers for, I strongly suggest that it's time for a new framework here, okay? Time for a new level of understanding. And you would be, like I said, a really great candidate to then experience the Lowdown holistic medicine methods. And the best place to start with that is what I call my functional wellness consult. In this functional wellness consult, we get a full 60 minutes together, but we're going to run labs first. So that way we actually have all of this data to talk through, along with your health history, your current symptoms, your goals. We're going to look at things through that holistic medicine lens here and really give you a roadmap for what is going on actually under the surface, not just waiting for things to get bad, especially for those people that are dealing with autoimmune patterns, chronic fatigue, hormone chaos, histamine issues. Your body is just waving this red flag, but you just keep getting the runaround. And that is exactly where the Lowdown methods and the holistic medicine methods come in beautifully. So click the link in my bio. It will take you right to my website where you can register yourself for a functional wellness consult today and not only experience what it's like to have comprehensive blood work, but also that next level deep dive as well. So tune in next week. We'll be back for part 3 of our series, and we'll see you guys then.